Welcome to today's episode of I'm Fine But. I am joined by Ash. Ash, welcome to the show.
Hiya, thanks so much for having me.
So, Ash, please tell our listeners who you are and what you do.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Ash. I'm an author and an online course creator. I have got 4 children's books out and I've got a memoir book that's due to release at the end of June. But it all kind of comes back to one core theme, and that's supporting parents who've left a toxic relationship to rebuild themselves again, find their voice, and also help their children to understand how to love and be loved and make sure that they don't repeat these toxic behaviors at home.
Wow, what a powerful theme to go on. So, this has all stemmed from your story. So, can you tell us a little bit about where it started?
Yeah, of course. So I met my ex-husband in 2017 and was in a relationship for about 5 years. I had 2 children during that time frame. And by the time my son was 1, I'd realized that this relationship was really toxic. I was walking on eggshells. At the time when I left, I didn't really understand what the problem was. But during one conversation or one argument we were having, he called me a narcissist. And I thought, I don't know what that is, but I'm pretty sure it's not a nice thing. It doesn't sound like a nice thing. So that evening when he went to bed, I jumped on my phone, I looked it up. And the minute I looked up what a narcissist was, all the patterns of behavior that had been happening in the relationship just made sense. And I knew exactly what I was dealing with. And that's when I realized that everything that had been happening in our relationship had been purposeful rather than a lot of the time he would say things like, "Oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to. It's just, work's really stressful." And everybody has these struggles, don't they, in their life? Um, Everybody kind of says, "Oh, I don't know. We've got financial issues, work's really stressful." And he blamed it on that. And that just wasn't the situation.
Yeah, and I've done a bit of work coaching, and I was sort of saying about the narcissistic traits, and I was sort of questioning myself. And I said, maybe I'm just a narcissist. She just said to me, if you are questioning if you are a narcissist, you are not a narcissist. And I think that's, when you really look at yourself, you look at different traits, and especially if you get to a really low point, you do look at what you're doing and go, is it me?
Yeah, definitely. And I think I felt that in the relationship because I think you often fight fire with fire. So when somebody's coming at you with all of these different, toxic traits, it's really easy to get swept into it and to respond in the same way. So by the time I was leaving, I thought, like, maybe it is me. I'm not too sure. It could be. But yeah, for like a really long time after I left, I wasn't I didn't know it was domestic violence actually. I just thought that we'd had a bit of a toxic situation. We weren't right for each other and that we were better off apart. And it wasn't actually until he sent like this really weird message to my mum saying, hope she's okay with parenting and everything. I'm a little bit worried about her mental health." And at that time I was really worried that he was going to take the children away from me. And I put all of the messages forward to the police and was like, I just want it on record to make sure that everybody knows my side of things and what's happened. And from there, all the domestic violence services kicked in and helped me kind of get back on my feet. And that was the first time I realized, and I think probably there's a lot of people out there who don't believe that coercive control is abuse and they're waiting for somebody to actually hit them to know that it's time to leave.
Yeah, it's really scary, isn't it? Because we've always seen abuse as this physical thing, and nobody knows what's going on behind closed doors, do we? Like e- everyone can portray on social media the lovely, happy family image that we want people to see, but actually, no one really knows what's going on. So, what gave you then this idea to go? Well, actually, I need to, create a business from it.
So actually, I didn't. I was watching your very first episode of the podcast actually when you were talking about how it kind of happened organically or a little bit by accident, and that's kind of how it happened for me. So once I'd left, I did a lot of healing. I had therapists and everything. All the services got involved for me. But what I realized was there was nothing out there for my children. There was no access to counselling. I didn't really know what to say. My daughter was having really big meltdowns. So we were having like 30-minute meltdowns 3 times a week. I didn't know how to console her. Sometimes I was having to take her out and walk around the park at 9 o'clock at night, in the winter, because it was the only way I could physically calm her down. Um, and I was like, there's got to be a link between what they're seeing in their other house and why they're behaving like this. But I didn't know what to do. So I started to write some books. because at the same time she was asking me really tricky questions about why does her dad shout at her like this, and sometimes he says something and then he pretends it didn't happen and she doesn't understand it, and I didn't know how to talk about it without saying, without villainizing her dad. So I wrote some books and I thought we could maybe talk about the character together. And if we could talk about the character, then she could see herself in it and we could start from there. So I created the books for my children, and everybody around me was like, you need to get these books out there. So I put them out, and from there, the social media just grew. So when I was in that relationship, you talk about like having a village, and I felt I just didn't have a village around me. So from the outside, it looked great. And we had this big, beautiful house and all the cars, and it looked fantastic. But on the inside, there was nobody in my village. Like, he'd made sure that my mum didn't feel welcome in the house, my friends weren't coming, I wasn't going out. So all of a sudden, I went from no village to like 50,000 followers in the space of a couple of months, and people sending me emails saying, "Oh, I've really connected with your story. Thanks so much for the books. They're really great. Have you got any courses? Have you got anything else?" So from there, I started to create some courses based on what people were looking for. And because people are connected with my story, I was like, let's write the memoir book, let's get it out there, let's share the story and maybe empower other people. So it was very much a business that happened by accident.
Yeah, they're always the best way, honestly. Like, I think when it just naturally happens and you get this following, it really sort of validates as well that what you are doing is a worthwhile journey. And how did you start even creating the characters? Because you said that you were struggling to answer your children's questions. And I find that I sometimes struggle to answer my children's questions in just an everyday, like, life situation. I'm like, "How do I actually know what the right thing to say is here?" How did you find actually putting that down and writing it?
So it all came from research, really. So I started with just writing a long list of all the questions she'd ever asked me, and also all of the concerns I had about her. And I jumped on and had a chat with my friend Claude, and he kind of helped me like unmodel what was going on in my head. But what I realized was there was almost two separate topics I was talking about. So that's why I've created two separate series of books. So I've got a book which is called Sam Support Series, and that's all about focusing on the adult's toxic behavior and answering the questions that my daughter had. And then I have Alex, and Alex was actually the first storybook I wrote, and it was about meltdowns. So I wanted to have a way of talking about tricky behaviors that my daughter or my son were having, like meltdowns or like constantly asking for reassurance without pointing the finger. Because I don't know about your children, but my children really don't like criticism. They struggle to take any kind of criticism when it's directed at them. And so I wanted this storybook. But once I'd figured out what the topics were that I wanted to talk about, that's when I started researching why it was happening, what we could do about it. And I came across, the four coping strategies. So there's fight, flight, freeze, and there's actually fawn as well. And most people don't know about fawn. So my
Yeah.
daughter had been having all these big meltdowns, and she was very fighty. It was very physical, very obvious that she was struggling. And when I started to look into it, I found fawn. And when I found fawn, I realized that there's actually this child who like goes within themselves and they shrink and they don't actually say what's going on. They just adapt to what other people want them to do, and they forget to be themselves. And I saw a lot of that in my son. And from that point, I was like, oh, I need to create something bigger. I need more stories. I need something for both of my children because they're very different.
Yeah. And it's really important, isn't it, to acknowledge their feelings. And, we've spoken a lot recently about doing things wrong that I think children, I know that I did growing up as well, that I just didn't think I should ever do anything wrong. Like, I had this good girl syndrome, like, I don't want to ever do anything wrong. And, I was speaking to my eldest and she's 15, and I was saying, it's okay to do stuff wrong. It's actually part of learning, and it's just how you react to that situation and how you react to doing something wrong that actually, is the proof of the pudding, really. It's not about you doing something wrong, it's actually how you react to that. And she was like, "Oh, but I was wrong." And I was like, "But that's okay." I was like, "We're all wrong. Like, nobody's perfect ever." And I think it's really showing them that as a parent as well, that you can be wrong and that you can hold your hands up and go, "Do you know what? That was my bad. I was completely wrong. How do we move forward from this? How do I make amends?"
Yes, definitely. And I talk a lot about, so one of the traits of narcissism is that they don't take accountability for anything that they do. So for
Yeah.
me, it's always been really important to take accountability. So if I'm wrong, or if I've, shouted when I probably shouldn't have, I'll always come back to my children at the end and say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have shouted. I should have handled it like this, because I want to show them that, we're not all perfect. We all make mistakes, and maybe give them an alternative way to like resolve it as well. And that's what I found really useful with the books is, if you want to have a conversation with your child, that's quite difficult to start a conversation. But if you start with a book, or if you start by talking about a film that you've watched, you're actually having a discussion and you're talking about something else that isn't directly about them. So you've got so much more opportunity to have conversations that are important without them feeling like you're attacking them.
Yeah. And have you found throughout this journey, from when you've started to where you are now, have you had any sort of pitfalls within that? What have been your struggles?
For me, I think the struggles are more around managing a business and managing motherhood. Because, so at the moment, I'm also running a tuition center, because obviously this came by surprise. I was expecting to just throw a few books out there and see what happened, and it's kind of snowballed a lot quicker than I was expecting. So just trying to make sure that I have the time for my children, but I can really see the bigger picture here, because this business that I've got now is going to help other people, and it's going to help other parents connect with their children, but it's also helping me to connect with my children, because everything that I do before I put it out there in the world, I use with my own children. So we really are opening those conversations, and I'm trialing lots of new things. I'm researching things that are specifically going to help my children, but also help other people's children. So the time that we spend together is actually really important now, because it's almost like I can do parts of my business and enjoy time with them. But long term, I think having books and having digital courses where once they're built and created, people can access them wherever they want. That's going to give me a lot more time back, and it's going to give me more time to have with my children. But we're at that really tricky situation where we're growing and we're trying to do it at, quite a significant speed. And so there's days when I think, God, I've done really bad in business, but I've been a fantastic mom today. And then other days where I think, it's the opposite way around, and it's really difficult to balance both.
Yeah. And it's just expectations that we put on ourselves. We believe we should be the best parent possible for our children and also be the best business person that we possibly can. And you can't always do them both 100%. Sometimes something has to give, and it's kind of acknowledging that and going, okay, well, I managed that today, and that's okay, because as women as well, the expectations we put on ourselves are huge. And do you find yourself looking at other businesses and going, I should be there, or I should be further on?
Do you know what? There's so many people out there in like this kind of influence world, because it's changed, hasn't it? It's all about personal brand and putting yourself out there and showing all parts of your personality. And there's so many people out there who just look like they've got it all together and they're doing a really fantastic job. And I've read so many other people's books and I've thought, wow, this is a fantastic book. Like, they've written this, they've got it out there. And as I started to put my stuff out into the world, I've had so many trolls come back at me. So I get lots of really lovely messages too and people connecting, but I get a lot of messages from people who are really unhappy about me sharing this secret that they don't want, shared out into the world. And I also get um, people from my past life who are very unhappy about the fact that I'm releasing a memoir. So I look at all these other people and it's made me wonder, like maybe they also have these same issues that I'm having, but they're so good at showing up and not letting it affect them. And so I want a little bit more of that in my life.
Yeah. And it is the world that we're in, that people only want to see the beautiful house and family, and that they don't always want to see. And maybe that's just because it's the culture that we're in now, that we don't want to show that side, but it is so important, because there will be those women that are in a similar situation to you that will read your memoir and go, I'm not alone. Like, I've got this village of other women who have been through something similar. And so, how do you deal with this toxic side of it, this trolling that's happening online?
Okay, so at first I didn't really know what to do and I would just stay away from social media. So I wasn't going into the comments, I wasn't going into my inboxes. And over time I realized I was missing that connection with other people. And thought, I can't keep doing this. This isn't going to work for the business. So I needed to find a way to reframe it and make it into something more positive. And that's a part of me that I think has always been really important through business, is turning like my pain into purpose. So when I was struggling with breastfeeding my daughter, I later became an infant feeding worker so I could help other mums who were in a similar situation. And when I left the toxic relationship, I created the business so that I could support other mums going through something similar as well. So I was looking at those messages and thinking, how can I change it into something that's more positive? And I'm working on it at the moment. So hopefully in the next week or two, or probably by the time this is live, I'll have my new video series on my social media. So I'm going to call it Red Flag of the Week. And I'm going to take the nastiest message that I've got each week and I'm going to share it with the audience and we're going to break it down and talk about what kind of tactics are going on. So is it manipulation? What kind of abuse are we seeing here? Because I think if we can empower other women to see what's happening and not accept it, that's really important to me. And one thing I always talk about is that silence doesn't protect anyone else but the abusers, and they are out there and they are going to jump into your inbox and they may be in your life. They could be, your parent, they could be a friend, it could be a partner. And the more that we stay silent, the more that we're offering protection to them. So for me, it's really about, rather than internalizing it and saying nothing, let's get it out there into the world and let people see the actual ugly truth of what's happening.
Yeah, and it's such a brave thing to do as well. It's not the easy road, is it, to stand up for yourself? And I think when you get any negativity around your business, it hurts so much. Like nobody can explain to you how much it hurts when it's something that you've created and that you're doing it for a positive purpose, that somebody feels like they can tear it down online. I don't think anyone can really prepare you for that sort of feeling when you first read it, can they?
No, and I didn't realize how bad it was actually, because there's so many people who just don't seem to be able to scroll past. And that would make sense, wouldn't it? And what really surprises me is a lot of these people are parents themselves. So you would think that they're really busy with their own families and their own businesses or whatever they've got going on. But actually, they are taking the time to send these messages. And, I don't really understand it. But a couple of weeks ago, I got my very first like 1-star review. I had my suspicions that perhaps the person knows me because it felt quite personal. But even that was a bit of a shock to have the first negative review. And I'm actually quite glad it probably happened on my children's books rather than on a memoir. I think the memoir is all about my personal story, whereas the books are, I'm a little bit more kind of a step away from it. And I think the memoir, when those negative reviews come, will probably be quite hurtful. Um, I mean, I love reading and I've read so many other people's memoirs. And when I got my first 1-star review, I went onto Amazon, I looked up at their books, and actually almost every single book has got some negative reviews there that, people didn't like it. And I think it's just taking it with a bit of a pinch of salt, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I know for me, when we released our book last year, it was for me, it was almost like therapy because it was everything, although it wasn't from a memoir point of view, it was more to empower women. I felt like it was everything that I wanted somebody to tell me. And it just felt so lovely. Once I'd started, I couldn't stop. I was drilling everything out that had pissed me off, everything that, someone had said to me when I had a baby, every feeling that I'd not told anybody, and, how lonely you feel. How has writing the memoir been for you?
It's actually been really healing. So it's so nice to hear you say that because I actually bought your book for my sister and she had a baby last year. And when I read through parts of your book, I thought like, this is it. This is everything. And she suffered really badly with postnatal depression and she felt like she was really on her own. I think reading something like that kind of said, it's okay to not enjoy every part of it. It's okay to feel ways about your baby that you think aren't normal because other people feel the same way. I think that was really important for her. Um, with my book, I think it was actually like a healing journey because there was so much in there that I hadn't spoken about before. So there were stories in there that I hadn't told my mum, or if I told my new partner, I told him what had happened, but I'd alluded to the fact that it happened after it was too late. But actually, the reality was that he actually kicked down our front door after a drunken night out before I even walked down the aisle and got married to him. And it was something I felt really ashamed about, that I should have known better. I should never have continued. But for whatever reason, people like me, we carry on. We've promised all these things, and you kind of brush it under the carpet and think, it will all be okay. It was just one time, and we carry on. So it was really healing to share everything and put it out there and actually take a deep dive, because there was so much in there that I'd forgotten. And in the back of the book, I've written a letter for my own children, because I'm hoping that one day maybe they'll read this book and they'll realize that, I've made lots of mistakes, and just that they can come to me with absolutely anything.
Yeah, that's such an important part as well. And I think when you're writing these things down, for me, it felt like a safe space. It felt like actually it was really therapeutic to get it out. The scariest part was when it actually got released and I knew people were going to read it. And, your friends, your family, and everyone in the world that, that could possibly read it, Amazon's worldwide. So anybody can get your book anywhere. And that was the scariest part for me. It was actually on release day that I was like, oh my God, people are actually going to read these, internal thoughts that I've been having. And do you think that your children will read it and feel some sort of understanding of what you've been through and how you've got to where you are?
Yeah, I hope so, because I think that my children are still 6 and 4. So when we left was it 2, 3 years ago? They're so young that they don't remember probably, and they probably won't remember. And I guess that's a really good thing, that they won't have memories of how toxic the relationship was. But there's going to come questions, and they're probably not going to understand what's happened. And when I was writing this book and I was talking to my mum, I was like, how did you manage to be such a fantastic mom? Because she raised me on her own. So there was me and my sister, who's 5 years younger. She was a single mom. She pretty much always stayed as a single mom. And she put herself through 2 degrees to become a social worker, and I've always idolized her. I think she's fantastic, and I was like, "How have you managed to do this? Like, how do you know the answers to all of these questions?" And she was like, "It wasn't like that at all. We went through some really difficult times where we didn't have any money. We had times where I had to study and I had to tell you to go off and play, and you were upset about it, but you just don't remember all these things." So, it was almost like I'd been trying to replicate something that wasn't true about her motherhood, and I'd put these really big expectations on myself as, what I should how I should be a mum. And by actually being able to speak to her about it, I realized that, we all have these bits about ourselves that maybe our children don't realize, because we're very good at covering up. And I wanted them to be able to read the book later on in life and understand that I've made mistakes and things haven't always been this easy. And I just wanted them to know a little bit more about me, and I wanted them to feel that they can come to me with anything, even things that they've done that are really bad. And in the book, I talk about some of the things that I did. So as a child, I was a bit of a bully, and this girl is actually my one of my best friends to this day, and I'm not really sure why, but it was a really good opportunity for me to give the book to her and use it as an apology, and just kind of like take a deep dive into all the different things that I've done in my past. So yeah, hopefully my children will read it and understand why I needed to leave and everything I've done to protect them moving forward, but also know that, there's room for error.
Yes. Yeah, there's always room for error. And it's exactly like we said earlier, it's just how you deal with that error, isn't it? And how you make amends. So if we've got people that are listening or that are watching on YouTube and they're wondering, actually, I can see a little bit of myself, within your story and what's happening, what one bit of advice could you give to them?
Um, I think just tell somebody, start talking about it, because it's a bit like when you have a business idea and you bounce ideas back and forth. When you've got somebody else to talk about with it, it makes a big difference. More ideas come and more clarity comes. So by keeping it quiet and not saying anything, you're never going to really understand what's happening, and nobody can see what's happening to be able to help you. So just talking about it, really, even if that's like writing it down first to feel more confident, but just pick one person and start saying something, because, that silence isn't the thing that's going to save you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really important. And, I talk about this village of women that we have to have our village around us. And it's just having that safe space that, you've got people, even if it's someone that you don't know that's particularly close to you, there's so many places that you can reach out, different charities that you can talk to that can just have that place that you can go and offload. If we've got people that are listening that are thinking about starting a business similar to yours, but are not sure where to begin, what advice could you give them there?
I would say just don't be afraid. I think a lot of people have this idea that you need to have this whole business plan and you need to know exactly what you're doing. But I think the best businesses come from passion, and just put it out there. Because when I first started, I created all of these beautiful free guides. I was like, I'm going to give these guides out and that's how I'm going to find people. But that isn't what people connected with, because I was creating something that I thought people wanted and not what people actually wanted. So the only way you can find out what your audience actually want is to put yourself out there. So I would probably say don't be afraid to just jump straight in, and you can always find your feet as you go along. I obviously just jumped in and thought it was going to be this small little thing and I'd have time to figure it out. And very quickly things grew. And I've moved my timeline up massively from, I was thinking, oh, I'll create some courses in August maybe. And here we are, the first two courses were created in May. there's there's no point having this really rigid business plan or time frame, because it just won't happen like that. And I think the best businesses are more organic.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So if people want to find you online, Ash, where can they find you?
So they can find me on Instagram, they can find me on Facebook at Ashling Podmore Official. And if, they, 'cause 1 in 4 people have suffered from domestic violence. That's the reporter statistics, and I'm probably sure that's many more than that. Most people I meet know somebody, like, whether it's a sibling or a friend or themselves. If you think that the book may help you understand a little bit more about what you've been through, from kind of maybe barely parenting to finding your parenting throne again, please do go and check me out on Amazon. I'm sure it'll be live by the time they're able to watch this.
Yeah, what we'll do is we'll pop all the links in the show notes. So if you want to go connect with Ash, if you want to go get her book, then just scroll down to the bottom and all the links will be there. Ash, thank you so much for joining me today.
No, thanks so much for having me.
You've just listened to I'm Fine But. If you're unsure about business or what really matters to you right now, why not take our free core values course? It's linked in the show notes and it's a brilliant place to begin. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and you can follow us online at all your favourite social media platforms at Baby Beats UK. Until next time, I'm Rose and I'm fine. But honestly, we're all just figuring it out.